Guess who's back, everyone? My name is Elk, and here I have my first brand new drawing video for my YouTube channel. And this is a very special drawing that I've been planning for a while, and I'm so glad I finished it. This is an extra special Neo-Geo painting to celebrate the 40th anniversary of SNK, Shin Nihon Kikaku. And this is actually something that, as I've mentioned before, I've planned for a while this year. This year, 2018, is the 40th year that SNK has been in business. And interestingly enough, before I actually started with this painting, SNK had actually set up a contest back in June of this year called My SNK Life. So, for those of you who don't know, My SNK Life is where people were able to send in pictures, things like, pictures of your SNK game collection, drawings, cosplay, stuff that shows what a fan you are of SNK and the games that they've made over the years. And me personally, I'm a huge fan of Neo-Geo, their legendary arcade machine, and that's pretty much what got me into SNK. So, even though I had planned this before I knew about the contest, look at the way I recreated the Neo-Geo logo, by the way. I really love how I did that. Anyway, this was something I wanted to do for a while, just as my own way of celebrating the company. And it was supposed to be a lot less characters and fewer arcade machines. I think it was only supposed to be one American and one Japanese arcade machine, the way I originally envisioned it. And I was going to include the Neo-Geo AES home console as well as a Neo-Geo CD console, but in the end I wasn't able to fit those after I started expanding things. So when I learned about the contest, I went way beyond my original vision for this painting, and I wanted to include more and more in hopes that I would really impress SNK with what I came up with. So I added some more arcade units. You can see some of the ones that I've added on the side where I have my reference pictures. And I actually had to do a lot of research into SNK's candy cabinets. These are the Japanese style sit-down arcade cabinets. There was a bunch of Neo-Geo systems in Japan that I had never heard of until now. It was pretty interesting delving into that type of history. So I included a bunch of these, and the Neo Candy machine, the 29 that you see right here, I really wanted to include this one because I had actually seen this one in real life, and I'd actually been able to play it. But this is one I didn't know about, the Neo 50. The 50 stands for the size of the TV screen in it. It's a 50-inch monitor, and it looks so amazing. I really wish I could play one of these in real life. But anyway, beyond the arcade machines, I also included more characters than I wanted to originally. I made sure to include a bunch of obscure characters that I knew a lot of other people would not include in whatever they sent to SNK. And I was right. Just recently, I think this was about a week ago from when I was recording this, SNK put out a video, My SNK Life video with all of the pictures and all the video that fans sent to them for the contest. And they actually included my painting in that video. You see there, I made the Neo 19 a little too large, so I downsized it. It's difficult for me to keep these sizes in mind because the Japanese arcade cabinets are all sit-down cabinets. The US ones, they're taller because you play them standing up. Anyway, yeah, there was a lot of paintings. There were paintings, a lot of pictures in that video, and I was just really impressed with what everyone showed. There was a lot of wonderful cosplay. Some people had some amazing collections of games, whether it was the Neo-Geo arcades, the Neo-Geo consoles, or anything else that that SNK had ever made. I'll actually link to the video in the description, the My SNK Life video. If you want to skip ahead to where my painting is, it's about 15 minutes into the painting. Into the video, excuse me. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there. I really recommend that you just watch the entire video and just take everything in. But anyway, yeah, there's characters in this painting that were not in any of the other pictures that were in that video. Like, I included characters from games like League Bowling, Polestar, Twinkle Star Sprites. I included the ship from Alpha Mission 2. Let's see. I included a character from King of the Monsters 2. And I even included G Dapper, I think that's his name, the Japanese mascot for the Neo-Geo system. So, yeah, none of those characters appeared in any other photos that people sent in. Some people might have had a few of the games. Like, I think at least one person had Twinkle Star Sprites. Another person had Alpha Mission 2. But other than that, yeah, I really, really dwell far into SNK's Neo-Geo history with this one. You can see right here, I even included, I think his name is Yoshinori Tokugawa from Samurai Shodown 5. So, I did end up impressing SNK quite a bit. I actually got the attention of one of SNK's animators on Twitter. But unfortunately, as I've just learned a few days ago, I didn't end up winning the contest, which is no biggie. I'm still glad I painted this. I really am. It's definitely one of my more ambitious paintings that I've ever made, because of the sheer number of characters that I've included and the time that I spent on getting the arcade machines as accurate as I possibly could without taking too much time on them. And to help with that, I actually discovered a perspective ruler in Clip Studio Paint. That's the painting program I'm using here. And that was a tool that I didn't know about before until I discovered it just now. It really helps with setting up the perspective for all the machines, which is, perspective is an incredibly difficult thing to work with. You can't ignore perspective, because otherwise everything's going to look very, very off. But that doesn't change the fact that I hate perspective. When you're not doing it in a digital program, you end up having to set up a bunch of rulers and stuff that go way beyond the painting. And it just takes up a lot of space. It's very time consuming. It's still very time consuming, even with the tools in digital programs like this. But anyway, my jaw is starting to hurt from all the talking I'm doing. So I'm going to take a break from talking, and I'm going to leave you with some music. Since I'm currently in the process here of drawing in Metal Slug characters, I will leave you with some music from Metal Slug 3. So first off, I'm going to start you with one of my favorite songs in Metal Slug 3. I hope you like it. Enjoy. And that was 3 songs from Metal Slug 3, which is actually the very first Metal Slug game that I had ever played, but not on the Neo-Geo. I actually played it on the classic Xbox. Anyway, this character that I'm drawing here is not from a Neo-Geo game. This is actually, what's her name? Yuzu Makijima. And I wanted to include her with the giant robot, which is Cyber Wu from King of the Monsters 2. And this is actually a callback to the game Neo-Geo Battle Coliseum, which I have on the PlayStation 2. Yuzu Makijima was introduced in that game, which is a crossover of several Neo-Geo characters. She is actually the one piloting, well, not piloting, but controlling Cyberwoo with a remote control in that game. She does not factor in the King of the Monsters 2. But these two I really wanted to include. This is Roddy and Kathy from Top Hunter Roddy and Kathy, one of my favorite games on the Neo Geo system. And for all of these characters here, this is a character that I almost did not include, but I really wanted someone from World Heroes. This is Fuma from the World Heroes series. Most of the characters here, a lot of them I'm not really too sure how I picked. For a couple characters, I just went with a couple of recognizable characters from some key series on the Neo Geo, so I wanted at least one character from World Heroes. And I wanted to make sure I covered a wide variety of genres for Neo Geo games. Here's another one I really wanted to include, was the player character from Magician Lord. I'm actually not a big fan of the game Magician Lord. It's definitely far from one of my favorite games, but I know that it's still a very notable game on the system, so I wanted to include that character in there somewhere. But of all the characters that I included, there were 4 characters in particular that I really could not deal with not including somewhere. These are mandatory characters that had to be in the painting somewhere no matter what. And those 4 characters are some of the most recognizable from the Neo Geo system. They are Terry Bogard, Mai Shiranui, who you just saw me planning out the positions for Mai and Terry. I also wanted to include Nakoruru, which is right here. You can actually see me drawing her hawk, which is named Mamahaha, standing on top of the Neo 19. And then the 4th character, I actually completely forgot who that was. Maybe there was no 4th character. But this character I had a hard time drawing in, not because she's difficult to draw. She's no more difficult to draw than anyone else. It's just that there isn't a lot of reference material for her. She doesn't have a very notable appearance in the game that she comes from. This is, I forget her name, Kaoru Yamazaki, I think it was. She is from the game Polestar. Yeah, Kaoru Yamazaki. She's from Polestar and Blazing Star. And that goes back to the whole genres thing. So I wanted to include some references to Neo Geo shooters. So I have her in there. I have a ship from Alpha Mission 2 that I haven't drawn in yet. Now Koruru I also had kind of a hard time drawing because her head has her facing away from you. So you don't get to see much of her face. And I don't typically draw a lot of characters from that kind of angle. Now, Koruru is a very cute girl, so the way I drew her facing that direction, I thought it looked kind of ugly the first few times I did it. And so, Rick Hunter here, he's from Mutation Nation. This is actually a game that I only played just recently, but I thought he looked kind of cool, so I wanted to find a place for him in there somewhere. So interestingly, there was still a lot of characters that I didn't get to include in the painting that I really wanted to find room for. I got Rock Howard from Garo, Mark of the Wolves here, but I wanted to include a couple more characters from Garo. You can see pictures of characters that I wanted to include but didn't on the right side. So earlier I had B. Jennett, who's also from Mark of the Wolves. I wanted to put her in the painting somewhere, but in the end I didn't have enough space. I also have art for Tizok, and uh, there's another girl from that game. I keep forgetting her name. I want to say it was Hitomi. If you hear me clicking my mouse, that's me looking at my reference photos just to remind myself of her name. Hotaru. Yeah, I wanted to include Hotaru. I couldn't find any space for her. I also wanted to include characters from games like Crossed Swords, Shock Troopers, and Art of Fighting. It's kind of surprising that I didn't find any place for any Art of Fighting characters. I actually don't even have any reference material for Art of Fighting characters like Ryo Sakazaki, Robert Garcia, Yuri Sakazaki. The only reference picture I actually have is for Mr. Big, but couldn't find space for him. And I also wanted to include the player character from Blues Journey, Ragai, I think his name is. I actually had space for him because he's actually kind of a tiny character. The only reason he's still not here is because I completely forgot about him. But a lot of the reference material I got, that all came from the web. But for some things, like for Rick's shoes here, because they're not in the box art that I have, I actually had to load up the games in a Neo-Geo emulator and take screenshots just to get some extra details. So that way I could fill in Rick Hunter's boots. And then there's a few characters that I don't actually have any reference material for, like Nakoruru. I didn't download any pictures of her from the internet. The reason I didn't do that for characters like Nakoruru is because I actually pre-ordered the King of Fighters 14 Burn to Fight Premium Edition, which includes an art book that has concept artwork for all the characters, one of which was Nakoruru. And since Nakoruru's appearance hasn't changed all that much over the years since her initial appearance in Samurai Showdown, I just took reference photos for her from that book. I did the same thing for Terry. I did the same thing for Mai as well at first, until I noticed that there was a couple of details for her that changed since the Neo-Geo days. And then for Rock Howard, I actually got this screenshot from the PlayStation 4 version of Garo Mark of the Wolves, which I just bought recently. And I thought it would be interesting to try out the screenshot tool on the PlayStation 4, just because I don't use it much. So I should make sure I know how it works. Anyways, though, yeah, I thought this was a pretty neat pose for the Fatal Fury characters here, like Mai. This was something I planned for a long time. I wanted to have Terry and Andy competing at one game while their canon girlfriends, Mai and Blue Mary, respectively. No. Mai is Andy's girlfriend, not Terry's. My bad. I wanted to have the two girls cheering them on both sides of the machine. So, for Mai's pose, I really liked the pose. It was very dramatic, and I just think it fits the character very well. I spent a lot of time modeling her breasts, which I'll admit that's something I tend to do a lot for girls who have much of their breasts exposed, because it kind of annoys me sometimes the way breasts are portrayed in art, or the way you're supposed to portray them. Because when I went to art college, I drew a lot of live models. A lot of models were both clothed and nude, so I learned a lot about how things like breasts work in real life, how they behave based on gravity and things like that. And then the fans were pretty difficult to do. That was actually when I discovered a curve tool in Clip Studio Paint, which really helped a lot. But there was a lot of meticulous detail in there. But going back to her breasts, I wanted to. I spent a lot of time making sure they behave properly with gravity, and making sure her clothing looked very loose against them, so like they fall further than the breasts do. But it was very interesting getting all those details right on her clothes. Not just her, but a lot of different characters, especially. It was actually a lot more difficult with Andy and Terry, just because the way they're positioned. I have them sitting down, and although their clothes are a lot more simplistic, it it kind of looks weird against the stool that they're sitting on. That'll become more apparent in a moment. But anyway, I'm going to leave you with some more music again while I rest my jaw. This time, I will leave you with some tunes from Fatal Fury Special. So here is the theme of Duck King to start you off with. Duck King is not in this painting, but here's his music just because I really like it. That was two songs from Fatal Fury Special. I believe the second one was actually the theme of Mai. I thought it appropriate to play her theme just because I spent a lot of time talking about how I drew her. And I also want to correct myself on something. The Japanese mascot for Neo-Geo, his name's not G Dampler, it's G Mantle, actually. He's the guy in the big black cloak and the happy mask who's standing on the right side arcade machines. I have no idea where I got the name G Dappler from. Maybe because he looks so dapper. But anyway, these characters in the back here. This is, I forget her name. I think it's Hitomi. She's from The Last Blade 2. Nope, not Hitomi. It's Hibiki. Next to her is Kisara Westfield from Aggressors of Dark Combat. And these are two more incredibly obscure characters. I picked them mostly because Hibiki was in the game Capcom vs. SNK 2, which is how I got introduced to SNK. And then Kisara Westfield because she, like Yuzu Nakajima, was in Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. And also just because I think Aggressors of Dark Combat is a pretty cool game. But next to these two, we have the main or most well-known characters from the King of Fighters series, which would be Kyo Kusanagi right here. And then on the other side is his rival Iori Yagami, and they both just kind of stare at each other intently. Now, there's a very good reason why I drew these two guys here with those two girls next to them. And that's actually just because of an interesting bit of trivia that I learned a couple years ago about the Neo Geo, which I thought was pretty interesting. So after the for the King of Fighters games, SNK wanted to be a bit more varied with their character designs, because with stuff like Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, the games were mostly full of macho men. So with King of Fighters, they started to do a couple more characters who were younger and more leaner looking. And then going into the 2000s, when the whole term of moe was introduced, they started to do the same thing with like cuter and younger females, to the point where there's a very young, very small girl in, I believe, King of Fighters 2002, maybe one of the games before that. I think her name is Hitomi. That might be where I got the name from. Despite her small size and stature, she actually is a heavy character who fights with sumo wrestling techniques, which I thought was pretty cool. But anyway, here's where I'm going with this. After the King of Fighters games came out, they started... a lot of girls found themselves attracted to arcades in Japan that had King of Fighters games, because they were so enamored with the younger boys in the game, most notably Kyo and Iori, which they affectionately dubbed Kyo-sama and Iorin. And you'll have to excuse me for some of the for some of the pronunciations of the Japanese characters. I'm actually learning Japanese, so I'm trying to use a lot of proper Japanese pronunciation here. And so here I actually have the player character from League Bowling. I included him here just because not only is he pretty obscure, but I actually kind of like the character for how expressive he is. And if you've played League Bowling, you'll kind of understand why. I just thought artistically he was a very interesting character. And it's basically also the reason why I included the girl from League Bowling, even though all she does is just stand on the other side of the screen and show you the controls. I'm sure nobody's really thought about her for a long time, so I thought, hey, I should just put her in here. And what really bothered me, though, about the League Bowling guy is his eyebrows. I just really hate the way they look. They look like big slices of cheese on his forehead, especially because they're not the same color as his hair. So I just really hated how it looked, so I just decided to make it the same color as his hair when I drew him. But I do have him holding the Neo Geo Mini. This was actually going to be one of the prizes for the My SNK Life contest that I mentioned earlier, which is it's kind of disappointing that I didn't win. So now I'm gonna have to buy one of these with money, which is fine because I really wanted it anyway. The Neo-Geo Mini is actually also the hands down the most difficult thing to draw in this whole picture. I had to do a ton of messing around with the perspective tools again. There were a lot of times there were a lot of times when I got the dimensions of the machine wrong, or where I left out some details. It was such a pain. Every time I had to go back and draw this thing, I wanted to die on the inside. But I really wanted to get this thing accurate because, again, this was about trying to impress SNK. And I'm pretty sure nobody else in that contest even drew a Neo Geo Mini. Nobody took a picture of themselves with it because it hadn't come out in stores yet. See, this is what I was talking about before. The buttons were incredibly difficult to get right. And then there were a couple of details that I messed up on regarding the joystick. League Bowling Man, pretty much every character in this painting was very, very easy to draw by comparison. Man, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. It might have been easier if I had an actual Neo Geo Mini to draw from. Actually, you know what was also pretty difficult? Was League Bowling Girl's lips. For some reason, I have quite a bit of trouble drawing feminine lips. I don't know why. I guess it's just because I don't really draw them all that often for one reason or another. But other than that, she was a blast to draw. Just getting her in this pose, making sure that her height was correct, which you saw me correcting there. I had to move parts of her body a bit. Her hair was also kind of neat because it's kind of sectioned off into several large strands, because I tried to stay true to the original art style that she was drawn in for the game, which is more or less true for every character that's in here. And then on the left of her, you'll see me drawing her in a minute. This is Athena Asamiya from the King of Fighters series. Well, she's actually introduced in the 1980s arcade game Psycho Soldier. And here's another interesting fact. I actually wanted to draw Athena, the original Athena, from the Athena arcade game, in this painting somewhere. I was going to have her next to Kyo instead of Hibiki, but in the end I left her out because my first thought was I wanted to include some characters that are from before the Neo Geo, because I at first I didn't want this to be all about the Neo Geo. Actually, I forgot to mention this earlier. In my original vision of the painting, which I later forgot about when I changed my whole vision, I wanted to include more than just Neo Geo hardware. So, like, I wanted to include an Athena arcade game. I wanted to include an Akari Warriors arcade, maybe a few other arcades. You probably noticed earlier that there's a small character with big eyes that was on the arcade units in the thumbnail drawing. That is actually Marvin from Marvin's Maze, one of their earlier arcade games from the 1980s. But again, I left him out and Athena because since this is mostly about the Neo Geo, I wanted to stick with characters that were in the Neo Geo era for SNK. So I didn't want to include characters from before that unless they also happened to be in a Neo Geo game like Athena here. Athena Asamiya. It was also at this point that I actually realized that Athena's look actually changed with every single King of Fighters game. So, I mean, I did notice that she looked different in some of the games. I just didn't realize it was in all of them. So this particular version of Athena Asamiya comes from King of Fighters 2000. And the only reason I drew this character was just because I happened to like the reference art that I have displayed on the right there. I thought it was a pretty neat outfit she was drawing. But if I could go back and do this again, I would probably draw Athena the way she looked in King of Fighters 94. But at the same time, I'm still happy with the way she looks here. I actually kind of like the her hair. I think her hair looks pretty good. So, and then on the sign here, I actually have it saying SNK, the future is now. And after after I finished the whole painting, I later changed it because there was an issue with the text in the box where for some reason something happened with the text. I don't know what happened, but I wasn't able to change it, and I wasn't able to change the font. I think that's what it was. I picked a font for it. I didn't like it. I wanted to change it, but I couldn't. So I had to erase all of the text to get the font that I wanted. And so in that instance, I ended up changing the future is now to Happy 40th Anniversary. And in order to do that, here's an interesting factoid about the text. Never mind. I was going to say, I got the font that I used from a Neo-Geo game, but I remembered that in the end I didn't end up doing that because I couldn't download the font. But I do like how I had to change the position of that Neo-Geo logo just because it ended up getting covered up by Rick Hunter. So I decided instead of drawing it again, I'm just going to move it over to the Neo-Geo Mini, which definitely saved me a lot of time. So with that, I think now is a good time to leave you with some music. This time I will play you some music from the King of Fighters series. So let's start with a song from the King of Fighters 94. And I will see you in a bit. And that was three King of Fighters songs in a row, one from 94, one from 96, and one from 2000. And so here's the Twilight section of the painting, in which I fill in all the colors and then fill in all the details. And man, this was really getting to me at this point. Not that I wasn't having fun, I really was painting this, but man, it took me such a long time. I think when I counted the runtime of all the video that I had recorded painting this, it ran to about a little more than 10 hours. By the way, do you like how I drew Load Ran from Twinkle Star Sprites holding some MVS cartridges? I doubt most people are going to pick up on that if they see the painting, unless I point it out to them. But yeah, I really want to. That was another carryover from my original vision from the painting. I wanted to have her fly in with some extra Neo-Geo cartridges for the arcade units. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are going to look at that and think, why is she holding a bunch of videotapes? Well, they're not videotapes. But wow, I learned a very valuable lesson from painting this, and you're going to see why in a minute. But when you're coloring, you probably should not want your background to be all white when you're coloring, because when you fill in the colors, you're not always going to be able to tell if you've colored in something that's supposed to be white, or if there's something that you forgot to color in, because there was a ton of things that I forgot to color in by the time that I was done with this. So there was just a lot of things to keep track of, and by the time I thought I was done with this painting, I ended up having to go back and correct a lot of things that I forgot to color in, or things that I accidentally colored in the wrong color, such as Load Ran's broomstick. It's not actually, at least not in the game Twinkle Star Sprites, it's not actually a wood color. It's more like a gray sort of metallic color. And then later on, I actually forgot to color in Haomaru's foot. In fact, if I could go back and correct something else that I might have did wrong with Haomaru, I might actually readjust his size, because the way he appears when he's kneeling down, he looks like he's probably a bit taller than he actually is. But I mean, I've come too far in the whole drawing process to correct that now, and there's just a lot of detail on him, like his spiky hair, that I really do not want to do over. So it is what it is. I probably shouldn't have mentioned this, by the way, just so I could get away with people not noticing that I did that. That's just my pride as an artist coming in sometimes. But and the way I drew Marco here, he does look a little odd when I go back to it. Like I made one of his pupils a little too large. But the way he's standing, that's actually from one of his victory poses in Metal Slug after he defeats a boss and passes through a level. He actually just stands like that, and he looks like he's laughing. It was funny. Fio's pose is actually from a victory pose in the Metal Slug games as well, when she defeats a boss, or at least if she happens to be there when the boss is defeated. But it was funny having drawn her, just beating the Mars person at the game. So there's a lot of cute moments like that I'm really happy with, and I'm really happy with what I did here with the eyeshadow on this character. Is that eyeshadow, or is that something else? This shows how much of a girl I am not, because I'm not familiar with all the makeup. But just between you and me, there's another detail that I tend to forget when I'm drawing people. I usually forget to draw the eyebrows. I don't know why. That's just like, well, not second nature. I almost said second nature, but that's not what that means. It's kind of a detail that I tend to forget, is what I mean. So, and I really like the detail that I did on the Neo-Geo Mini. I got it as close to perfect as possible, so my time really paid off. So here in this painting, this is a little funny thing I did just to make up for the fact that I left so many characters out that I wanted to include. So to make up for it, I decided I would block in the marquees on each of the arcade machines with games that feature characters that I wanted to include but couldn't in the end. So that last one that I just did, that one's the only one that I did from memory. It's actually Real Bout Fatal Fury 2. And the reason I chose that game is because the marquee art for that game is just so recognizable. So you'd be able to tell it apart from the other Fatal Fury games from a distance, because it just has Terry standing in the background with his hat on the ground close to where the camera is, and there's a foot from another character. I think it's Ryuzaki. So like for that machine, I figured because Fatal Fury characters are crowded around it, it had to be one of the Fatal Fury games on that machine. So and now there's screenshots from the game on the machine. I actually had to cut off recording in order to get those on there because, one, I actually wasn't sure how to put in external images into paintings that I'm doing in Clip Studio Paint. And then you just saw there, I was trying to get the Neo-Geo text on the side of the US arcade cabinet, but I couldn't find a font in my collection that matched up with the font on the actual arcade machines, so in the end I decided not to do it. So for the other machines, I went with the machine in the middle that Rick and Rock are playing with. The games that are included on it, you saw it a minute ago. It's Shock Troopers, Mutation Nation, what was the other one? Magician Lord, and the King of Fighters 2000. And then on the other one, there was the one with Kaoru and Nakoru. Those games, you can't actually see all the marquees because of the way the machine is angled. But the marquees that you can see are Blues Journey and Last Resort. So for the screenshots, I again just went into a Neo Geo emulator and took actual screenshots from each of the games I wanted to include. And I even put scan lines on them, so they look like actual arcade monitors. And then for the other one, the big 50-inch one, I included a screenshot from Samurai Showdown 4 Amakusa's Revenge. Just because I figured that's one of the Samurai Showdown games that's going to be on the Neo Geo Mini, at least the international one. I don't remember if it's on the Japanese one. But it took a long time for me to get that one because I had to sit through the attract mode on the game and look for a specific matchup that I wanted to play in its demo mode. Because I wanted to have Theo playing as one of the female characters in the game. It didn't matter which one. So I ended up with one where she's playing as Charlotte, and then I had to wait for Charlotte to actually hit her opponent. In this case, it's Kyoshiro. So I wanted, since she's supposed to be doing the victory pose, I wanted to make it look as if she's winning the match or if she's already won. And I kind of messed up because for some reason Charlotte's health gauge is empty, but Kyoshiro's is full. But it's whatever. And after I'd already gotten that screenshot there, I realized that Cham Cham was in the game, so I wanted to try and take another screenshot with Cham Cham, with Theo playing as her, to include there instead. But then I realized that Cham Cham apparently is only in the PlayStation version of Samurai Showdown 4, so I had to cancel that plan. But I'm still happy with the way it looks. I just wanted to go back and erase the press start button sign because I wanted it to look like they were actually playing the game. I just left in the title screen that's present on the attract mode just to give people a hint as to which Samurai Showdown they were actually playing. And I had to make sure it was the Japanese version of the ROM that I was running because that's a Japanese arcade cabinet. I really did go into a lot of detail with these kind of things. That's how passionate I am about Neo-Geo. I just really wanted to get all of this right. And then it was kind of a pain with Cyberwoo in the background because there's so many smaller touches to him, and I had to make sure I had to include shadows and lighting everywhere where they were present. And there were lights emitting from his eyes, some green lights. I had to make sure to get those right. That wasn't too hard, but there was a lot of places where I forgot to add some shadow. I had to correct that later. So, yeah, here's where I'm adding in all the shadows. Cyberwoo in general was a major pain in the ass to get right. I actually don't do a lot. I don't actually draw a lot of mechs, a lot of robots or machinery. I probably should, but the opportunity doesn't present itself that often. So Cyberwoo took a long time. It would have been a lot easier if I had more reference artwork of him, but I could only find 2 from Neo-Geo Battle Coliseum, and they were at some awkward angles that I didn't end up drawing. So, and by the way, I also originally wanted to put Cyberwoo in the middle between the 2 sets of arcade units. I moved him over to the other side because I wanted to create space for Kyo and Iori and the girls who were next to them. So, with that being said, the drawing video is almost over, so I think I will leave you with a bit more music before we get to the end. This time, I will play you some songs from Samurai Showdown 2. Okay, well, I only had room for one more song, but this was a perfect one to go out on, I guess. So here's the painting. This, as a reminder, it took me well over 10 hours to make. So, anyways, there was a lot of the a lot of other mistakes that I had to go back and fix without actually recording, because I didn't want to take the time to record more video fodder of just me figuring out whatever I forgot and having to fill it in. And as for the screenshot in the Neo-Geo Mini, I sourced it from King of Fighters 2000. And that reminds me, KOF 2000 never saw an official console release in the US, except on the PlayStation 2, so this should be the AES's first official release in the United States. Also, I just realized that Samurai Showdown 4's screenshot is from the US version, when I meant for it to be from the Japanese version, so that is just swell. Now I gotta go back and change that. The links I go to sometimes to get all the details I need, I swear. I also forgot to color in a lot of stuff on the Alpha Mission 2 ship. A couple more details on some of the arcade units, so I got all that done, and it looks really nice. I'm really happy with the way it came out, and I'm glad all my hard work paid off. So, anyway, I hope you all enjoyed watching this little video of my whole process coloring this in, or not just coloring, but drawing it in. I actually have another video planned for SNK's 40th anniversary, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully I can finish it and get it out to you sooner rather than later. So yeah, there's the drawing. With that being said, thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you want, but be sure to like, share, and comment as well. My name is Elk, and that's all I got, so I'll see you when I see you.